Good morning, everybody. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about graphing quadratics in standard form. So just a reminder, standard form is f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So when we are graphing in standard form, what we have to do is we have to find those same six key parts to graph that we found in vertex form. But in order to do that, first thing we got to do is what we were always doing with standard form, and we just have to figure out what A equals, B equals, and C equals. So once you look at that and you find A, B, and C, we can move on to what we were doing in vertex form. So first thing that we're going to want to do is find our vertex. Now we said our vertex is made up of H and K, but now finding H and K is a little bit different. So to find H, we're going to do negative B over 2A. So once you find your A, B, and C, you can plug that in and find your H. And then to find K, we're going to plug H in for our X and PEMDAS. So basically solve it for Y or K. So once we find the vertex and the K, we can move on to axis of symmetry, and the same thing, X equals H, or you could say X equals negative B over 2A. Because we already found H, and we found H by doing negative B over 2A. So after finding axis of symmetry, we have to decide, okay, is this up or down? And that's the same exact thing as vertex form. If it's a smiley face, it's up. If it's a frowny face, it is down. Number 4 is minimum and maximum. And that's the same thing as the vertex form. If I see that it's up and my vertex is at the very bottom, that's going to be a minimum at K. And then if it's facing down, it'll be there. That's going to be a maximum at K. Now the last two things are we're going to find x-intercept and y-intercept. So I'm going to start with y-intercept because that is super simple. So y-intercept, all we have to do is plug in our x's with zeros. But if we look at standard form, we have ax squared plus bx plus c. And if I start plugging in zeros for the x's, anything times 0 is still 0. So if I had a times 0 squared plus b times 0 plus c, I would have 0 plus 0 plus c. And all that's going to make it equal to is equal to c. So y-intercept, you can always say 0, and then whatever your c value is. So that's real nice and simple. Now for the x-intercept, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to use the quadratic formula. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So once we have that, we have our A, B, and our C. So we can just plug it into these and then solve it with the quadratic formula. And then usually we'll end up with two answers because of this plus or minus right here, which we always deal with at the end and split it into our two equations like we were earlier in the year. So those are the 6 parts. So let's go ahead and try and do one together. So if I have f of x equals negative a, oops, not a squared, sorry, a little tired this morning. There's no a. Negative x squared plus 8x minus 15. There we go, that's our problem. F of x equals negative x squared plus 8x minus 15. So, first thing we should do is let's find our a, b, and our c. So a will be negative 1, b will be 8, and c will be negative 15. So be careful for here. So for our negative 1 and our negative 15, you want to make sure you're looking at the signs in front. So if it's a minus sign in front, you need to make sure that comes with it and it makes it a negative number. So let's start with our vertex. We said x equals, or h equals negative b, so negative 8 over 2 times a, which is negative 1. So that's going to give me negative 8 over negative 2. And we can simplify that. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. So for my vertex, I have 4. Now I can do my, now I can find my k. So we say k, we're just going to plug in our h value into the x's. So I have negative 4 squared plus 8 times 4 minus 15. So 4 squared is 16, and then that times that negative on the outside is going to be negative 16. Oops. And then 8 times 4 is 32, and then minus 15. So with this negative 16 minus 15, it's going to be, so negative 16 plus 32 is positive 16. 16 minus 15 is going to equal 1. So my vertex, I found it. It is at 4, 1. So I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to draw a little graph. And I said at 4, 1 was my vertex. So it's going to be right there. So let's think about our axis of symmetry. We said x equals h, right? So this shouldn't be too difficult. I just look and I see that 4 is my h value, so x equals h. So I can just draw this dotted line just to kind of show, hey, this is the middle point of my graph. On both sides, it's going to be the exact same. So what I need to do now is decide, is this going up or down? And to do that, we're going to look at our a values. So if we look, we see a, and we say, hey, it's equal to negative 1. So that means it is going to go down. And then, so if it's facing down, we have to decide, are we going to have a minimum or a maximum? And if it's going down, that means we're going to have a maximum. And we said the maximum is at k. So we see here, our k is equal to 1. So it's down with its maximum at 1. So now what we can do is do our y-intercept. Now, the y-intercept's easy. We just said 0, comma, and then whatever c is equal to. So now my y-intercept is going to be 0, comma, and then my c value is negative 15. So 0, negative 15 is my y-intercept. So I'm not going to do all those marks, but I'm just going to say this spot is 0, negative 15. Mark it there on the y-axis. And all I need to do now is find my x-intercepts. So we said negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's plug those in. So we had negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 15 all over 2 times negative 1. So negative times the 8 is just going to be negative 8 plus or minus square root. 8 squared is 64. And then negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. And 4 times negative 15 is negative 60. And then 2 times negative 1 is just going to give us negative 2. So I'm going to start by solving all this stuff inside of the square root. So I have negative 8 plus or minus. And then what's 64 minus 60 is just 4, right? So we have the square root of 4. And then the square root of 4 is just 2, right? So I'm going to start writing this over here. Negative 8 plus or minus 2 over negative 2. So now that I'm here, I need to split this up into two problems because of this plus or this minus. This plus or this minus right here. So I'm going to do negative 8 plus 2 over negative 2 and negative 8 minus 2 over negative 2. So negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 over negative 2 is positive 3. And then for my other one, negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is positive 5. So my x-intercepts are going to be 3, 0, and 5, 0. So I'm going to go back up to my graph, and I count to 1, 2, 3, 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. And those are my x-intercepts. So now all I have to do is connect my lines. Ooh, that was bad. And there we go. So that's how you're going to graph in standard form. So have a good day, guys.